Yeah, sure.
Welcome to Women's March Canada podcast, making the equality of Canada the new norm. This is episode 44, and it's titled Pressed for Knowledge. My name is Melissa Durrell, and I'm your host. Women's March Canada inspires, unites, and leads the charge for the advancement of women across Canada. Please welcome this week's guest, Jacqueline Leung. And Jacqueline's the founder of Pressed, a Canadian digital media company that connects people through conversations and news on all world issues, allowing news to be more accessible and understandable to Canadians. It's great to have you on the show, Jacqueline. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Super excited to talk about what you're doing. Now, of course, I'm a former journalist, so I am a news hound, and every day in my email box, I have a whole, like from the Globe and Mail to, and I have skimmed, and of course, TechCrunch, and I mean, literally 15 different emails telling me about the news. And now I have a new one, which I'm really excited about. So tell me about Pressed.
So I come from a background where I'm the opposite of you.
Okay.
Not a journalist, not from an English background. I worked in marketing and media. I thought I wanted to work in sports marketing for the rest of my life. And then when I got there, it became a really fun, cool job, but it felt like I needed something different. The reason I started Press is because I never used to follow the news. I would try to read a 2,000-word article, but then I would be left with more questions than answers because I didn't follow it when I was young. I thought it was really boring. I thought it was really jargony. It felt like it was articles written for journalists. And so it kind of took me out of the game. But I realized that I was being left out of conversations when I was at work events or even in meetings. And so I tried really hard. I used to be an avid skimmer. And then our 2015 Canadian elections came around, and I thought the skim is going to keep me posted on what's going on with the elections. And all they said was the hot guy won up north.
No, is that what they wrote?
That's what happened. And so I just really felt there's something missing here.
I'm processing that. Okay. Yes, you're right.
Right? And it really got me thinking, I don't want to just create a Canadian version of the skim. What's the big problem here? And so I realized the problem was that we all have different knowledge gaps. You come from a journalist background, so you are caught up. I don't, but I feel like I'm educated, I'm intelligent. I also need to know about the news, but why are the articles written for both of us the same way if we both have different knowledge gaps? So we're trying to create a company that will help educate both of us and make sure that we can both have intelligent conversations with each other and everyone else.
What were some of the first, I imagine your learning curve was pretty high. And were you the one writing the articles, or did you right away hire writers to start? Or I should say pressing. What's your verb? Pressing?
We don't have one yet. We should make one. So I don't come from a journalism background, but I was always the person who was called to write all the copy. So luckily I was quite a good writer before I started. So I started writing all the articles. I wrote all of the newsletters in a Word document and just sent them to friends just to see what they thought. And then eventually we brought on some volunteer writers through school journalism programs. And then in about 9 months into our incorporation, we hired freelance journalists, and we have 2 editors as well. So there is a team of 6 of us now.
So talk to me about a day in your life, Jacqueline.
Oh my gosh.
Because I think I was on your Twitter feed, and I think it said, one of the tweets I saw was hello 4:15. So do you actually wake up, and start to read the news and sort of figure out I guess you're doing a lineup like a newspaper. What's your lineup for the day?
So we have an amazing managing editor and an associate editor who go through the news throughout the day. By 5 p.m., they choose the 5 top stories we're going to talk about. Okay. She assigns it to all of our writers, and by 10 p.m., the stories come into her inbox. She edits it. She gets it all together for me by midnight. But I'm already in bed. So I wake up at 4:15.
Good.
Yeah. So by 4:15 a.m., I wake up and do one last look at the newsletter, but also to see if anything happened overnight. We had a different schedule before where I would stay up until midnight and then edit at night. But we missed really, really big stories that came out overnight. So we didn't want to do that again because the news cycle is 24 hours. So now I take the morning shift, and then the managing editor takes the night shift. So after the newsletter goes out at 6:30 a.m., I typically go back to bed for a couple hours, and then I start again at 9. And then at 9, I'm taking meetings, working on growth, trying to raise money, everything else.
Yeah. So it's a great product. Are people reading it? What's happening with your company? Are you seeing growth?
Yeah, so our growth has been really great in the past year and a half. We've been launched. Our email is open. Our open rate is 44%, which is really great for a daily email that comes every day with a ton of content. Yeah, so we are raising money right now to expedite that growth. Like our resources are limited. Our funding is limited. So we know that word of mouth and referral marketing really works for us. So we want to put some money behind that. Also, we're building technology right now to, like I said, personalize the news so that an AI bot can understand what your knowledge gaps are versus my knowledge gaps. So that it can cater to the two of us and educate both of us. So that's sort of where it's headed right now, while our email newsletter and our podcast continue to grow.
So talk to me a little bit about your learning curve as far as a journalist. You're reading, you said it was the Canadian election, which was a really interesting election. I've always have to go back to sort of that Trump Clinton election as well. Yeah. There was a lot of news that was going on, and not all of it was true news. So, I hate to use the term fake news, but that's flying around. So, how are you putting all of this in and trying to keep it as authentic and factual as possible?
Yeah, so we get this question a lot. It's a really tough one for us because we aren't reporters on the ground. So we rely on other news outlets to give us the news. But what we do make sure is that all of our stories, however short they are, they're about 150 words, that we at least have 3 different reference sources, different ones. So that's a rule we've put in place. The one story goes through at least 4 people. So that's another rule we've put in place. So yeah, it's tough. If everyone is reporting fake news, then it's going to end up trickling down to us. It's sort of the reality of what we're working with. But we do really try to put different rules in place to avoid that for sure.
How do you cover the really controversial issues? Like I think of Kinder Morgan or how do you tackle that? Do you have an editorial stance, or what does that look like for your organization?
We talk about this one a lot internally as well, because we feel deeply about certain topics just personally, right? What we try to do, Kinder Morgan is one, the abortion debate is another one.
I was going to say, that's the one I was thinking about, the conservatives, 47%. I mean, how do you as a woman cover that and not?
So we always look for 2 stances. Okay. So we always say critics are saying this and supporters are saying this. And readers of our newsletter will notice that as well. The Israel-Jerusalem stories are also very controversial. So we're always trying to look at both sides equally.
What are the big stories that people should be following right now? I mean, you've really got your head down in the ground right now. So what do you think for our listeners out there? What are things that they should be keeping an eye on?
The elections. So a bunch of provincial elections happen, and I think 4 municipal elections are happening this year across Canada. I think our generation and our readers are typically between 28 to 35 right now, aren't following as deeply as they should be. And then we have a big federal election coming up next year. Yeah. I think it's going to be a really big topic, and I've never been so interested in it before. And so I think that's a really big one, especially for Canadians.
That is the exact demographic that tends not to vote. And do you think it's because they don't have information, and so this is something you can supply? And how do you do it in a non-biased way?
So what I'm learning is that politics are really, it's a really strange thing, because politicians are always promoting voting. Everyone should vote. Everyone should vote. But then the people they're promoting to are not the generation that doesn't vote. It's already the people who are voting for them, because at the end of the day, they just need to win. So I actually went to an event once, and I was speaking to somebody, I think in the Liberal Party. And I was like, oh, just wondering, how are you trying to target millennials? And she said, oh, what do you think? How do you think we should? And I was shocked. I was shocked that it wasn't a plan, that it wasn't a discussion happening. And maybe there are discussions happening that she hasn't heard about. But I just think the goal for politicians is to win, not to necessarily educate the people who are not paying attention. So I think that it's our job.
Partisan politics, right? Like that's part of the reason why partisan politics are so difficult. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that I feel like that's our job to, we come from a really different perspective. We don't come from the journalism background. A lot of our writers are just like social media, marketing, and English majors. And so we are really trying to educate ourselves while we're educating other people. And so we're not here to tell you to vote for a certain party. We really just want everyone to be on the same page.
So taking off your journalism hat, you're also the CEO. What's that like? I mean, what a big jump for you from, I think you were working at a sports network, and now you've moved into, do you like being your own boss?
TBD. I'm still working on it. One thing that I have struggled with, even before, I used to manage a couple people in my last role, and that was challenging for me. Managing people isn't a strong suit for me, but as the CEO, it's something that I need to learn to do. I also think there's a lot of things that you don't expect coming into it. Just reading legal documents, knowing how to bookkeep, and just so many things that you don't expect when you come out of working in a corporate job that is already taken care of for you. But there are also lots of benefits as well. But it's
I can only imagine. Now, I wonder, have you been approached for acquisition at all? Because it's, I'm sure you've got that. I mean, you have that millennial group there.
Yeah.
Is that something you're looking at, or?
Not explicitly yet, but we have had, conversations with different companies for sure. We're not there yet. I want to build something that's really meaningful before we get there. I want to build something that doesn't exist yet before we get there. If we get acquired right now, we won't have the freedom to do that.
I'm curious about, you said you were raising funds, and it sounds like you've got a really interesting AI component that you're looking to bring in. How has it been fundraising? Are you looking mostly in Canada, or are you going over the border?
So we raised a really small round last year, a seed family friends round, an angel family friends round.
Yeah. And
we were successful, but it was tough. This year we're raising almost 5 times that amount. So we're kind of in between this. It's too high for angels, our family and friends, but too low for VCs. Plus there's this crazy stat
That's an interesting gap in Canada for companies just like yourself. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. And there's this, I'm sure you've heard this stat, out of all seed angel investments, only 3% are solely found by women. Plus I'm a solo founder of an ethnic minority, and just like also in media, and media is not typically something that Canadians like to invest in. So it has been challenging.
Yeah.
But there have been just like strategic investors who have come to us and said, we're interested. So those are the people we're looking at. Right now we're looking more for investors in New York who understand the media business, who know the success of the Skim very well.
I was going to say Skimmed nailed a huge investment. So hopefully you can play off that.
Yeah. So it's been challenging, but we're really hopeful.
I would love to talk with you again after you close this round, and talk to you a little bit about it, because I find it's a very interesting space. And I'm wondering, are there any female investors that you're speaking with? Because I think there's a nice, I shouldn't even say nice, there's a successful bridge between female investors and female founders.
We have a few, none that are focused on media.
Yeah.
So we are, instead of talking about our media side, we're really trying to focus more on our AI technology. So we've built the prototype. It's going to be ready this week, actually.
Very cool.
So
we'll be launching this week?
Well, the prototype's coming out this week. Yeah. And so that will, I think, create a new conversation with investors.
I'm so excited to learn more about this. Now, you also host a weekly podcast. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the idea is that we believe that our demographic doesn't want to read email every single day, and that maybe they're on a rush to a meeting and just want to pop in a podcast, or maybe they're in the car today. There's just we want to give them options. For me, I love listening to podcasts, and it's been a really big part of my life now. We want to make it a daily thing, less than 10 minutes. You're kind of like listening to 680 or like a news radio, but it with the same
top of the hour kind of.
Yeah, exactly. But not. Yeah. So very, we try to make it fun. We try to make it light, just like our newsletter, but giving you the option if you want to just listen to it while you're getting ready for work.
What are some of the organizations that have helped lift you to where you are today?
Some of the organizations. So do you mean places like Communitech?
Yeah, I'm assuming that. I know because I met you at your Standards. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say Communitech, Startup Toronto, and just the community, the startup community in Ontario has been really great. Communitech in particular, they have this great, I mean, I'm sure you've talked about it before, a great Fierce Founders program, where they put you through a boot camp and they teach you a ton of stuff. They teach you about pitching. And then there's an accelerator program where they've connected me to a coach and really great friends that will be around for the rest of my life. And so for sure, I would say Communitech has made the biggest difference for me so far.
Incredible. Well, I'm a huge fan of Communitech, so I'm happy to hear that. And thank you for giving the shout out. Now, how can people find you, follow you, and sign up to get pressed into their mailbox every day?
Yeah, so pressednews.com is where you'll find all of the information and you can sign up. And on social media, we're at pressed_news. Amazing.
Okay. Well, thank you. You've been amazing, Jacqueline. And I have signed up and I can't wait to, I'm going to get your podcast as well. I'm curious to listen to it. Yeah. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
This was great. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. So thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen. Your comments are welcomed and encouraged. Please subscribe to our Women's March Canada channel and receive updates every time we upload a new podcast, which usually is on Fridays. Our mission across Canada is to stand together in solidarity with our partners and our children for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that a vibrant and diverse community is the strength of our country. This is the Women's March Canada podcast. You can visit us on Twitter at Women's March CDA and our website, womensmarchcanada.com. I'm Melissa Durrell, and I'm hoping you have a great day.